Hi, welcome to Apparently So. Today we're going to talk about piping. I'm going to show you how to make your own and how to sew it into curved edges and sharp corners. So there are a few different kinds of piping. The most common kind is this kind that comes prepackaged, lots of different color choices, and it's pretty small. But this is the most common that you can find at, Joann's, Hobby Lobby, all those places. It's pretty common. There's also big textile piping that looks like this. Um, it's just bigger. Sometimes it's, ropes, or it has different textures to it. If you wanted to make your own piping, you can buy this cord. Usually it comes in big rolls that you have to have cut, but it comes in different sizes from this small to really big. So it's great to use for costumes. And basically you just grab your strip of material and wrap it around and create your own. I'll show you how to do that. But if you wanted to be kind of a cheapskate like me, I actually bought this whole big roll right here for $4 like years ago. And I actually just wrap fabric around this and use this as my cording. And if I wanted to, I could even cut this part off and just have just the round part. That's just easier for me. So to get started, you're going to need your piping. You're going to need some scissors, either little ones. These are little Ginger thread snippers. They work great for this, something nice and sharp. Or you can use your regular big scissors. These are Kai. Um, they're my favorite scissors. They're so great, but they're nice and sharp, perfect for what we're going to need them for. And your fabric. So whatever you're using, I'm going to show you how to put piping into a fabric with a lining. So we're going to use 2 layers of fabric. So that's what you're going to need to get started. So I'm going to be using a zipper foot. I'm using a Viking Opal 670. So my zipper foot might look different than yours, but that's basically what they look like. It'll help you get closer to the edge of your piping. So take your fabric and wrap it around that cord if you're making your own piping. And you're just going to set it against the zipper foot and just sew a straight stitch all the way down against the cording. It doesn't have to be super close to the cord because you're going to adjust that when you actually sew it into the fabric that you're putting it into. So for this case, you just have a few pins and just sew straight down. So you're going to take your piping and pin it into the edge of your fabric in between these 2 layers. The cording side faces away from the edge. Especially make sure that you pin your corners in place so they don't move around. Then you're going to just sew a straight stitch down as close to that side. But this is actually our first stitch. What you're doing here is just making sure that it stays in place. We're not too worried about getting super close to the edge right now. When you get to a corner, you're actually going to stop with your needle down, pick up your foot, and pivot your fabric so that you can continue along that edge. Same with inside edges. You're going to want to make sure that you're feeling the piping, especially the smaller kind. It's kind of easy to lose it. So keep making sure that you're feeling it through the fabric. It's actually easier when you make your own piping because you can have a much bigger seam allowance to work with. Okay, there we go. So you'll notice if we flip it right side out that there is a lot of that seam allowance showing. So what we're going to do is flip it again, and we're going to clip our corners. So on our outside corners, we're going to clip about a 1/2 inch from each corner using our scissors. Not the actual corner edge itself, but a 1/2 inch from that middle corner on both sides. On our inside corners, we're going to clip right into that corner, so as close as we can get without cutting through the stitches. So that keeps our fabric from pulling, is going to give us some straight corners. So for this second run through, I took out my pins, and now I am going to make sure that I am very close to the edge, as close as I can get. If you're using bigger piping, you really don't have to be afraid to get very close to it. The smaller piping, you've got to be a little bit more careful because it's kind of easy to sew into it. So we're going to be cautious. You should see 2 lines of stitching. You should be very obviously sewing closer to that cording. So as you sew through, kind of notice that you're sewing, you should have 2 lines, and when I pivot it here in a second, you'll see those 2 lines really clearly. There you go. So you can see you're creating a whole separate stitch line. This helps reinforce it and just makes it easier for you to sew through. We're going to keep going all the way down, sewing as close as we can. Make sure you're feeling that piping and getting as close to it as you can. And we're doing the same thing where you stop and pivot your fabric. I'm going through, and then just go ahead and sew all the way down those lines again. Once we've sewn that second line, we're going to go back through and clip our seams. Make sure not to clip through that first stitch that we made. Make sure that you're clipping through that seam allowance, and as I'm flipping it inside out, you can see it's much closer than that first stitch that we made. Your next step would be to press it with your iron, and you can see that it does go into all those edges and doesn't bunch up, and your fabric stays nice and flat. So thanks for watching. I hope it was helpful to you. If you have any advice or tutorials that are also good for piping, you can leave them in the comments below. If you like this video, go ahead and like it. If you want to subscribe, please also do that. So thanks so much, and I appreciate all of your support. I'll see you next time.